Hello, everyone, and welcome to UNG's first annual research pitch. We're so excited you could join us tonight. We have a very fun and exciting evening of research presentations planned. My name is Dr. Anastasia Lynn. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Research and Engagement here at the University of North Georgia. And I'm thrilled to introduce you to all of our wonderful presenters tonight, as well as our awesome host and MC. Dr. Leyba. Just a little bit first before we get started about the first annual research pitch. This is modeled on the world famous 3MT or 3-minute thesis pitch. Now 3MT usually is limited to graduate students, but here at UNG, we wanted to make sure all of our students could participate. And so we created the research pitch, which will now be an annual event. And tonight we have 10 presenters from both our graduate programs and our undergraduate programs presenting, also from across the campuses. So without further ado, one more housekeeping note. As attendees, you will not be able to be on camera, and you'll notice all of us have our cameras off as well for the most part. But if you did want to give a shout out to a presenter, or if you had a question about their research that you want them to consider later, there is a Q&A button at the bottom. We won't be doing live Q&A during the presentations, but we do invite you if there's something you wanted to mention about the presentation, please do feel free to fill in that Q&A, and we'll be sure to get that information to the presenters. And if you just wanted to say job well done, we'll take that too. All right, without further ado, I'm gonna get our show rolling. First of all, we're thrilled to have Dr. John Leyba. He is our Dean of the College of Science and Mathematics here at the University of North Georgia. He is our host and MC for the evening. Dr. Leyba obtained his PhD in nuclear chemistry from the University of California, Berkeley in 1990. Dr. Leyba joined the faculty of the University of North Georgia in 2014. In February of 2019, Dr. Leyba became the interim dean of the College of Science and Mathematics here at UNG. Dr. Leyba has a passion for science in general and specifically for space-related discoveries. And I do think that we did not update the slide because I believe he is no longer interim. He is dean of the College of Science and Mathematics. So apologies for that, Dr. Leyba. We are thrilled to have you, and I'm going to let you take it away to introduce our judges.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. I appreciate it very much. And I'm excited to be here tonight, to be the MC, and to help our presenters be at ease. You can't possibly do any worse than me, okay? So I will probably goof up several things, and then you can laugh at me, okay? So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce our judges for this evening. First, we have Dr. Erin Barding, and she is a biology faculty member for about 10 years now. And she teaches a variety of courses for non-science and biology majors, including wildlife ecology, conservation biology, mammalogy, and study abroad courses in both Costa Rica and, believe it or not, South Africa. She works with undergraduate students to conduct ecological research with a focus on behavioral ecology and evolution in a host of parasite insect systems and wildlife ecology and conservation of mammals of northern Georgia. Our second judge is Dr. Benjamin Garner. He has a PhD in communication. So let me go back here and let's see here. Sorry, can we go back to the previous slide? See, I told you I'll put you at ease. So my list has them in different order. So Dr. Tiffany Rogers is the second judge. She's a faculty member and clinical coordinator for the Department of Counseling since 2017. She teaches several core classes for counseling graduate students, including research methods, counseling theories, multicultural counseling, and group counseling. Her research interests include women's issues in counseling, working with survivors of sexual assault and intimate partner violence, and the education and experiences of counselors in training. All right, the next judge is, okay, now Dr. Benjamin Garner. He and I started UNG at the same time. We went through a new faculty orientation together. He has a PhD in communication and teaches in the Mike Cottrell College of Business at UNG. His research focuses on communication and consumer behavior. And next, we have Dr. Tayawani Olake. Hopefully I pronounced your name okay. She's an assistant professor in the Department of Communication, Media, and Journalism at the University of North Georgia. Dr. Oleke earned her doctoral degree from the University of Florida. Her research focus is in health communication and cultural sensitivity in the development of health campaign messages. Dr. Oleke loves to spend time with her family, cook, and read novels in her leisure time. The next judge is Dr. Michael Lanford. He's an assistant professor of higher education at UNG. His research explores the social dimensions of education with specific attention to equity, globalization, institutional innovation, organizational culture, and qualitative methods. And that is all. Had to take my cheat note off the screen there. So our first presenter is Lesley Jones, and she will be speaking on Chivalry, Reborn, Victorian Medievalism, and Influence on Manners. And her faculty mentor is Dr. Thomas Greene.
Medieval period for a second. Did you think of something? Maybe King Arthur, or the knights that fought for him, or maybe those poor peasants and all the violence they must have seen. Well, I'm here to tell you that pretty much everything you think you know about the medieval period was probably made up by the Victorians. The people who lived in England in the 1800s experienced a lot of changes that seemed to all happen at once. England went from just a few islands to controlling over 10 million square miles. The steamship, the telegraph, the railroads, all of these new innovations happened at the same time. Not to mention Charles Darwin's theory of evolution and all the scientific breakthroughs that were happening at the same time. This is where it gets interesting. All the Victorians wanted was to go back to a simpler time, one they could understand and appreciate as the glory and strength of Britain. What they did was they created an illusion of the medieval period, constructed out of what they wanted it to be. It was based on all things that actually happened, but reinterpreted to suit our needs of Victorian England. Today, historians refer to this time as medievalism. Let's go through a couple of easy ones you might have thought of when I said think about the medieval period. Damsels in distress, ate everything with their hands, heroic knights, Robin Hood and his merry men. It's all medievalism, all of it. Chivalry is a perfect example of medievalism. You can find medieval sources that talk about it, but we wouldn't recognize what they say is chivalry today. That's because of the Victorians, and that is the basis of my research. I look at the Victorians' reinvention of chivalry in two forms of writing during the 19th century that romanticize these notions of gallantry, the medievalism in literature and the medievalism in the etiquette book. No one can really think of chivalry, virtue, and heroes without thinking about the medieval knight. Authors we know, like Alfred Tennyson and Walter Scott, portrayed knights that were the epitome of chivalry. They were strong and brave, handsome and kind, masculine and honorable. Men wanted to be them, and women wanted to be with them. Then we move over to the etiquette books. These books were literally how-tos on displaying good breeding and propriety, like those medieval knights we talked about. How to address someone, what to wear to a dinner party, how to ride a horse. My favorite I've read about was when a woman goes to a ball, she can only get a drink from her father, her brother, or her husband. To have good manners meant more to the Victorians than anything else in their social lives. And to have good manners, they thought, was to act like their version of a medieval knight. So ultimately, what I've learned in my research is that through medievalism, we got chivalry, through chivalry, we got manners, and through manners, we got gender roles. These manners and gender roles might have been in Victorian England, but we absolutely still feel their influence today.
So that was actually a pre-recorded message, actually talk, I guess, because she was unable to be with us tonight. So just in case you were wondering. Okay, so I've been conned into being the MC this evening to entertain you in between talks while the judges do their scoring. And so the first thing I thought I would do is reflect on my experience as an undergraduate researcher. So if you look on the Association of American Colleges and Universities, they have 11 high impact practices, and one of them is undergraduate research. And when I was an undergraduate, way back when, I actually had a 4-year undergraduate research stipend. And I did a project, it was actually 2 projects for 4 years. And it culminated in me giving a presentation, an oral presentation at a Missouri Academy of Science meeting in Warrensburg, Missouri. And I was sicker than a dog when I had to give my presentation. I had the flu, and this was way before COVID. And so I was able to give my talk, but it was not pretty. But my first research advisor actually passed away in the first semester that I was working with him. So I didn't have a very good start with research advisors. And so my second advisor stayed with me for 3.5 years. And what research did for me was it informed and cemented my original decision to continue on in the physical sciences, in particular, kind of a cross between physics and chemistry. And, you know, in the classroom, you're confined by the 4 walls, but in the lab, I felt free to examine a lot of different things and to really open up all the possibilities to me. And I would much rather experience something than read about it in a book. Now, don't get me wrong, I love to read and I enjoy learning, but I'd much rather do something with my hands in the lab. And so when you're in the lab or doing any type of research, whether it's in the library or lab or wherever, many times you're doing something that no one else has done, and you're doing it for the very first time. So you don't know the right answer, but that's what makes it exciting. All right, we are ready for the second talk. The presenter is Rebecca Corley, and she will be speaking on probing nuclear structure and dynamics at the electron ion collider. And her mentor is Dr. Sunny Mantri in physics.
Particle physics is the study of the most fundamental constituents that bind together to form all visible matter in the universe. Molecules consist of atoms. Atoms consist of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Protons and neutrons consist of their fundamental constituents, the quarks and gluons. Particle physics unravels the structure of matter through particle collisions. Particle physicists smash particles together to study the collision debris to learn about the structure of the insides of protons and neutrons. One could imagine that analyzing a particle collision is similar to crashing 2 cars together and studying the collision debris to understand how the cars were built. Looking at the picture on the left, you can see that an electron comes in and collides with the nucleus coming in from the opposite direction. When the particles collide, the debris is given off, which provides details about the structure of the quarks and gluons within protons and neutrons. We are preparing for particle physics to be launched into a new era of scientific discoveries. In January of this year, the United States Department of Energy announced that the Brookhaven National Laboratory will be the site for a new cutting-edge accelerator facility called the Electron Ion Collider, or EIC. The EIC will effectively act as a 3-dimensional microscope by probing the interior structure of protons, neutrons, and other atomic nuclei by studying collision debris. To contribute to this worldwide effort of investigating subatomic structure at the EIC, we will simulate hundreds of millions of particle collisions, which will provide theoretical EIC data for us to analyze. In this project, we are interested in quantifying the pattern of debris given off from particle collisions. The EIC will study electron nucleus collisions. In this process, a high-energy electron will collide with a high-energy nucleus. Take a look at the image on the right. The nucleus comes in and circles around the yellow ring in one direction, and the electron will circulate around the blue ring in the opposite direction. The particles collide in the orange band, which is the collider detector that will detect collision debris. In this project, we are particularly interested in a quantity that characterizes the pattern of particle debris known as one-jettiness. One-jettiness provides details of the momentum and spatial distributions of the quarks and gluons within protons and neutrons. If the collision releases energetic debris in many different directions, it is characterized by a large one-jettiness. Whereas if the collision has most of the debris in one direction, it corresponds to a small one-jettiness. This project is a study for constraining nuclear physics using one-jettiness at the EIC. The study will provide an assessment of using one jettiness as a precision tool for revealing the structure of quarks and gluons within protons and neutrons. Our research will contribute to the global effort of unraveling nuclear structure at the next major particle collider. It will be a contribution to the ambitious question, at the most fundamental level, what is our universe made of? Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. So now we'll continue on my journey with research. After I graduated my undergraduate institution, I attended graduate school at the University of California, Berkeley, and my 4 years of undergraduate research really prepared me well to start my graduate career. And I started in August, and I was able to do my first major experiment in October of the same year. And so without the experience of undergraduate research, I would have been probably a year behind where I actually was. And so I felt very good about my preparedness coming from a medium-sized school in the Midwest and going to a crazy place like Berkeley. But undergraduate research prepared me because it taught me organization and planning and time management skills, and it taught me how to properly use the library. Remember that place where they have those things called books? And you can actually open them up and look. So well before the PC, well before cell phones, we had libraries, and we actually had to go there to do the research. And doing research actually in a library taught me a lot of very valuable lessons. It also taught me about patience and perseverance. You're going to find out in life there will be many failures, but you can still learn from those failures, and it can inform your future decisions and help you actually succeed. And undergraduate research is kind of like driving in a big city and you don't have a GPS signal or a cell phone signal, and you're trying to go from point A to point B, and you keep turning left and right, and you end up finding something much more interesting than what you originally were trying to find. And research is a lot like that. You may start down a certain avenue and you're looking for something, but you end up finding something else. But that's okay, because that's the nature of research. And what I found in my experience is research will never go how you think it's going to go. It will deviate significantly. But it taught me a lot about my own character also. My ability to roll with the punches, go with the flow, and learn from your experiences. And if you don't do that, if you don't learn how to do that properly, then in life, you may have a harder time. All right. With that, we are ready for our next speaker, Hannah Cole, and she is going to be talking about assessing spread of the invasive Joro spider in Georgia using population genetics. And her mentor is Dr. Matthias Johansson in the Department of Biology.
Invasive species are one of the leading causes of declines for endangered and threatened native species. And today we're going to be talking about the Joro spider. As we see in figure 1, a female Joro spider will have a distinct yellow pattern on the abdomen as well as the legs, whereas the male will have a distinct brown pattern on the abdomen and legs. In figure 2 and 3, we can see that the Joro spider originates from Asia and were first recognized in 2015 in Madison County, specifically Colbert, Georgia. Their population has since grown from Northeast Georgia to North and South Carolina, as reported by iNaturalist users and emails from residents in Georgia. My research on the Joro spider is to further understand their ecological impact. So I am looking at their spread patterns by assessing their population's genetic structure throughout the introduced range. And I will also be assessing their impact on indigenous insect species by evaluating their prey's DNA. The data collected on the invasive species is to help ecology researchers and resource managers decide proper management action to limit their impact on society. So the first question that we're trying to understand is their rapid spread throughout Northeast Georgia. So if we look at figure 3 and 4, we can see that they have spread to a whopping 23 counties in Georgia in just under 5 years. Some possibilities of why these joy spiders are spreading so rapidly is due to ballooning, as well as being transported along human transport networks. Now, the first method, ballooning, occurs when a spiderling casts a silk strand in the air, which will essentially act as a parachute when caught by the wind. Now, theoretically, joy spiders can go through the air for hundreds of miles. However, that's not very common. So the second method that joy spiders utilize for their transport is via cargo transport or on commercial or private vehicles. So the importance of understanding their spread patterns is to determine if their spread is preventable, so that ecology researchers and resource managers can decide proper management and precautions to announce to the public to limit their spread. The second area that we are interested in is assessing the prey captured in their webs. One example is in figure 5, the importance of logging and collecting the the prey is to determine the range of species captured by the joy spider. This would be the first step towards assessing the population level impacts of the spiders on native insects. Prey identification will be done by performing DNA sequencing, and therefore identifying the prey and levels of impact will help ecology researchers and resource managers estimate the ecological stress on Georgia's ecosystem and indigenous species. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
All right. So many of you here tonight, whether you're listening or participating or both, are most likely thinking of going to graduate school or professional schools like medical or law school. And others of you are probably thinking, well, I just want to go into the workforce. And no matter what your path, you'll choose whatever's right for you. But for right now, I want to focus on those who are thinking about going to professional school or graduate school. These schools are designed to help you thrive. And the way they help you thrive is to get you out of your comfort zone. And that way you can grow as an individual. And you'll find in professional or graduate school that it'll be a much different experience than as an undergraduate. One, you'll spend a lot less time in class, and two, you'll be doing a lot more things on your own. For me, graduate school at Berkeley was the most intense and fun time of my life. I got to do things that I never thought I would ever be able to do, like work at a particle accelerator and be in on experiments where a new isotope of mendelevium was discovered. But one thing that I found out about all these cool adventures was it was never like it was to be portrayed on TV. There was never music playing in the background. There were never exotic cars, things like that. And so it was surreal to me. But one of the coolest things of my graduate school experience was when I got to meet Nobel Prize winners. And meeting them was just unreal to me. I got to meet Owen Chamberlain, for instance. I had a class with him. He won the Nobel Prize in 1959 in physics for discovering a particle called the antiproton. And he was probably the best teacher I ever had. Another one that I got to know very well was Glenn Seaborg. Glenn Seaborg won the Nobel Prize in 1951 for discovering plutonium and other elements. And he's the one that arranged the periodic table the way it is today. And I'll tell you some stories about these guys in the next break. So in the meantime, if you're thinking of graduate school, keep thinking, because it's a really cool thing to do. Our next speaker is Lydia Pelletier, and she's going to talk about racial stratification in Peru and its historical foundation. And her faculty mentor is Dr. Alvaro Torres Calderon in the Spanish department.
Thank you. So in 1531, the explorer Francisco Pizarro arrived in Peru, ultimately changing the hierarchical structure established by the Incans. So this structure was originally based on societal roles and their relationship with the Incan deity Huiracocha. However, with the arrival of the Spanish, this soon became based on birthplace and skin color. So also the arrival of African slaves further complicated this. And in the wake of the conquistadors, the Spanish became a symbol of wealth, of civilization, and even intelligence, while indigenous groups became a symbol of brutality, ignorance, and even poverty. So the famous painting seen in this slide called Las Castas depicts this racial division between the Spanish, those of Spanish descent, indigenous peoples, and Africans. And then on the right, you see how there is the hierarchical structure that came about. So Spanish dominated, second was indigenous people, and then at the bottom were Africans due to their arrival as slaves. So what has changed? It's the year 2020, so what has changed? So Peruvians were liberated from Spanish rule in 1821, but the racial divides that were initiated by the Spanish still remain, and that can be seen in media portrayals, employment opportunities, and the beauty industry. So in media portrayals, as seen in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a popular TV show in Peru called El WhatsApp de Gautam. And in this TV show, there's a character called Paisina Jacinta, and it's played by a man, but it is considered to be a representation of an indigenous woman. And this character is often seen as uncultured, ignorant, and undesirable, whereas you see on the right is a representation of the typical Latina woman living in Peru. And they're often sexualized and considered desirable, intelligent, and even blackface is used in this TV show to poke fun or to make jokes of Black individuals. In employment, here's a newspaper clipping, and it asks for someone who is tascalera, indicating someone with lighter skin. Additionally, we see in the beauty industry, so for example, the last 20 years of Miss Peru have all been women with lighter skin, showing a clear racial divide. So why does this matter to us? In the United States, we currently have racial issues. So looking objectively at another country can help us to improve and to grow as one nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. All right, so as promised, I said I'd talk about these Nobel Prize winners a little more. So I had a class with Owen Chamberlain. It was a quantum mechanics class. It was a very difficult class. I spent maybe 40 hours a week doing homework for the class, but he was such a good teacher, and he was always so full of energy, and he would get you excited about the subject. And one day he came into class and he wanted to do a demonstration on a computer. And so it was a Mac, an old Mac, and it was hooked up to a large screen video monitor. And he did the demo. And at the end, he wanted to turn the computer off. Guess what? He did not know how to turn off a computer. Another funny thing I saw him doing, he was old. He was probably close to 80 when I knew him. And he was driving his car. And he was looking between the steering wheel and the dashboard of his car. He's kind of hunched over, you know, kind of doing something like this. So anyway, excellent teacher, though. The other Nobel Prize winner that I knew very well was Glenn Seaborg. And Glenn Seaborg was a very personable kind of guy. And when he would meet you for the first time, he would put your name on a note card, and he would never forget your name again. All righty. So our next speaker is Jared Onick, and Jared is going to talk about bacteriophages, the bounty hunters of bacteria. And his faculty mentor is Dr. Allison Canick in the Department of Biology.
The constant emergence of novel antibiotic-resistant bacteria brings us closer and closer to the post-antibiotic bacteria era. where new therapeutics will be mandatory for sustaining human health. So how do we approach this problem? Well, I want you to imagine the human body as a town in the Wild West. The stores and establishments are organs, and the people can be thought of individual cells. Every once in a while, a group of outlaws arrives in town and wreaks havoc on this settlement and its inhabitants. These groups of outlaws are a bacterial infection, such as tetanus or salmonella. Now, the town can be well defended with the outside help of marshals and other law enforcement personnel. They can be seen as the antibiotics. But there's a problem. Every time the townsfolk fight off the gang of bandits, a few escape. These surviving desperados then go and teach other lawbreakers how to defeat the law officers, and they come back to the town stronger each time. So each time the outlaws come back, they're harder and harder to kill until eventually the town is overrun. These bacteria, our outlaws, have become resistant to the antibiotics, and it seems there's nothing that can be done to stop these infections. But there may be hope on the horizon, as there is legend of a group of bounty hunters whose one and only job is to stop these criminals. These bounty hunters do not attack the townsfolk, just the outlaws. These bounty hunters are bacteriophages. Bacteriophages are viruses, much like SARS-CoV-2, which turned the world upside down in 2020 and probably ruined your summer too. Like human viruses have adapted to making people sick, bacteriophages have evolved over millions of years with one purpose in mind: to eliminate bacteria. And some of these bacteria that they eliminate are those that are dangerous to us. These bacteria are dangerous because they carry disease-altering virulence abilities and are no longer affected by strong antibiotics. I work in a lab that helps to isolate and classify these bacteriophages from the wild. It is our hope that one day to discover a novel bacteriophage that, in theory, could be used to help stave off these deadly infections. One of the bacteriophages that I work with is named Shunwei. It was discovered by a student of UNG back in 2018. Shunwei is an excellent model for true phage lethality, as it has a lytic phage of its replication cycle. In layman's terms, this means it causes host bacterial cells to explode and die with great efficacy. Discovering new bacteriophages will further open the doorway for more bounty hunters to save more towns, and that is the focus of our project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. So next I'd like to talk about how undergraduate research will prepare you for your professional life, whether you go to graduate school or professional school and then go on to your career, or you go directly onto your career right after undergraduate. So when you are doing a research project, most likely you are just given some very rudimentary directions, and then with no very specific instructions. You only know where you're going to start and where you need to finish, and you're not quite sure how to get from start to finish. In the work world, you're going to experience the same thing. Your employer is going to expect you to have certain knowledge, or they're going to expect you to know where to go to find that knowledge so you can figure out what needs to be done. And there's not going to be a textbook that you can look at necessarily, or a solutions manual, or look in the back of the book or whatever to find out how to go from point A to point B. So research will prepare you well for that. It also helps you utilize your available resources so that you can economically get something done. So make sure you focus on the process of research, because all those things you're going to be doing will benefit you later on. All right, our next speaker is Bryan Rocha, and he's going to be speaking on why are women more susceptible to HIV/AIDS in Ethiopia than men. And his faculty mentor is Dr. Rana Gautam in sociology, and also classmate Erika Huizar. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but anyway, Bryan.
Hello, I hope you are all doing well. The topic I bring to you today is Why have women been more susceptible to HIV/AIDS in Ethiopia than men? The thesis of this project is a patriarchal society with a prevalence of early marriages and the lack of educational opportunities for women can make women more vulnerable in becoming infected with HIV. Why do I say this? Well, women are disproportionately affected by HIV in Ethiopia. Of the 650,000 adults living with HIV, 410,000 were women. What are the causes for this gender gap? The causes are divided between three sections. One, patriarchy, lack of educational opportunities for women and girls, and early marriage. A patriarchal society is known to block women's right to education and economic independence. However, the consequence of doing this is that without education and economic independence, many young women who are responsible for the well-being of their family are pushed into the sex industry, where the rate of infection is high. It is also known that living in a patriarchal marriage, women and girls who have a partner who is constantly unfaithful are vulnerable to becoming infected with HIV through their partner. Finally, concerning early marriage, in Ethiopia, 19% of girls are married by the age of 15. This leads to a lack of awareness about the virus due to the girl's young age, a lack of power in the marriage, and an increased risk to the virus due to the older man's sexual history. Aware of this, what are the solutions? Well, the Ethiopia Women's Development Package suggests that the country should abolish school fees for female students so there can be an increase in women's participation and they can get economic independence. Also, what can also be done is provide training for the job market to provide women economic independence as well, have reinforcement of domestic violence laws and rape laws, and ban child marriage. And also, to finalize, to provide opportunities of dialogue for men to dismiss patriarchal beliefs. This can all be done in synopsis to empower women that they can be independent and that they do not have to be submissive to rules oftentimes created by the men of their culture. As you can see, the importance of this is not only the psychological empowerment, but also the well-being and the health that all of these women, not only in Ethiopia, but all around the world, deserve for all of their lives and in future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryan. Next, I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes about people and knowledge. So people, what I mean by that is keep learning from those around you and also teach those around you. You're always going to find somebody smarter than you and somebody not as smart as you. And so you can use these opportunities of interacting with others to learn and to teach. So when you're learning, be a sponge and soak up as much as possible, as much as people are willing to give you. Likewise, give away as much as you possibly can. There's an old saying that says, stand on the shoulder of giants, right? So we need to stand on their shoulders to propel knowledge forward. Next, you should never stop learning. You should stay curious. Even when you get out of school, keep curious. Do not be complacent. Always push yourself forward to learn new and better things. I found in my life, I love reading and I love learning. And every time I start a new subject area, I'm just so excited to be able to learn about it. And finally, what I'd like to say is you need to maintain a healthy skepticism. So a healthy skepticism about things that you're exposed to. Don't just accept what others say at face value. Go and research it yourself. You'd be surprised how many people out there have an agenda that they're trying to promote and they won't give you the full story. So a healthy skepticism. All right, our next speakers, we have two, Andy Fleming and Madison Bunch, and they will be talking on the effect of kinesiotapes on the growth of human skin bacteria. And Their mentor is Dr. Dobruja Bielanska in the Department of Biology.
Hi, I'm Madison, and this is Andy, and we are studying kinesiology tape, also known as KT tape, and how it affects bacterial growth on the human skin. KT tape is a fabric-backed tape that is stretched and applied directly to the skin, as can be seen in Figure 4 on the far left. These tapes are used among athletes and in physical therapy to treat common muscle and tendon injuries by slightly lifting the skin to increase lymph and blood flow in the area that the tape is applied. This, as a result, can decrease healing time, decrease swelling, and decrease bruising in the affected area. Professionals recommend wearing these tapes for 5 consecutive days to achieve these desired results. And with that, there have been cases of athletes developing skin infections such as MRSA when wearing these tapes for prolonged periods of time. This led us to test if these tapes actually hold antimicrobial properties, as some of them claim, that can tamper with the beneficial bacteria already living on the skin. And we also wanted to test if wearing these tapes for consecutive amounts of days can cause an accumulation of organisms on or around the tapes.
So we tested this by performing 2 separate experiments. The first, we tested 9 different brands of KT tapes against 3 different organisms that you can commonly find on your skin. The first being Staphylococcus aureus, which is the cause of MRSA, and you can see in Figure 1. And the next is Staphylococcus epidermidis, which is in Figure 2, and then Micrococcus luteus in Figure 3. And S. epidermidis and M. luteus are both commensal or beneficial skin bacteria, so you want to see them on your skin. And when we performed this, we were able to see that 1 out of 9 of the tapes actually inhibited both the commensal skin species, as you can see in Figure 2 and 3, with the clearing around each of the pieces of tape. And that is not present in Figure 1 with the S. aureus. And we were also able to see in this experiment that across all 9 tapes, wherever the adhesive was flushed to the auger, there was no growth for any of the 3 organisms. And the next experiment that we performed, we actually had 10 people wear these tapes for the recommended 5 days, and then we plated these tapes on days 2 and day 5 of wear, and then incubated them for about 24 hours to see what kind of organisms would grow, as you can see in Figure 5. And then we isolated and are actually currently still identifying these organisms. And so far, we have identified 1 commensal skin species and 15 environmental species, 3 of which could possibly be pathogenic. And so with these results, we were able to conclude that these tapes could possibly affect the normal skin microbiome via either the accumulation of bacteria on the tapes or the tapes inhibiting the skin species, leaving the skin vulnerable to infection. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy and Madison. Next, I'd like to talk to all of you about the unexpected results of undergraduate research, at least my experience. When I decided to go into academia, and some of you might question, why in the heck would you want to do that? Well, sometimes I question that myself, but anyway, it's a lot of fun. And it was, to me, a big surprise how much undergraduate research helped my career in academia. First and foremost, it helped me personally in the lab, being in the physical sciences. It helped me set up new labs for students, new lab experiences, and helped me develop things which I thought would be very beneficial to my students. In another way that it really helped me is when I had to supervise graduate students as a faculty member at Clemson University, and I also supervised some graduate students or helped guide them at the University of Michigan. And it helped me really pass on advice and to help inform these students how to more effectively do their research and progress in their careers. So again, it kind of ties into what I said earlier about passing along knowledge and information. All right, we are ready for the next talk, which is Madison Rodriguez, and she will be speaking on educación en frente y inmigración en la mente the effect of immigration on mental health and academic experiences of Latinx college students. And her faculty mentors are Dr. Lauren Johnson in the College of Education, Dr. Efren Velasquez in Psychological Sciences, and Dr. Bryan Dawson in Psychological Science.
Let's talk about immigration and college students. Why? Well, immigrants and children of immigrants are enrolling into U.S. higher education institutions at a high rate. At the University of North Georgia, Latinx first and second generation immigrants have contributed to the steady rate of enrollment to the point that we're actually on our way to becoming a Hispanic serving institution. However, that led me to think, how are Latinx students dealing with immigration, academics, and keeping up with their mental health all at the same time? I focused on two groups: first generation immigrants, those who are not born in the US, and second generation immigrants, those who are born in the US, but they have one or both parents who were not born in the US. I wanted to focus on acculturative stress when it came to mental health because this is specific to those who are in between two cultures, such as immigrants. Acculturative stress has shown to cause an increase in internal mental health symptoms over time. And research has also shown that differences in school culture and home culture contribute to increasing levels of acculturative stress. I used a mixed methods approach to collect data by sending out surveys to Latinx-based organizations and interviewing a handful of students who participated in the survey. So my survey measured acculturative stress, anxiety, and levels of familismo, which is a common value amongst Latinx populations. I wanted to see the difference in levels of acculturative stress and anxiety between first and second generation immigrants. I also wanted to see if the levels of familismo were correlated with levels of acculturative stress and anxiety. For my interviews, I asked students about their K-12 experiences, ranging from questions about their school culture to the challenges they faced in school, whether it was indirect or direct experiences with immigration. I found that there were no significant differences between first and generation Latinx immigrants when it came to those levels of acculturative stress and anxiety. Overall levels of familismo were found to be positively correlated with overall levels of acculturative stress, which means that higher levels of familismo meant higher levels of that acculturative stress. It was also found that a majority of the students had been in ESOL classes. They sometimes felt uncomfortable in their K-12 school environment due to language barriers. Their parents had high academic expectations but low school involvement, and a majority of them applied to college on their own without much guidance from parents or from their schools. From this research, I found that it's important to understand how immigration can directly or indirectly affect Latinx college students. Future research could focus on how UNG Latinx-based organizations have contributed to this increase in enrollment of Latinx students. Recruitment could be translated to other diverse groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. Have you noticed how the time between talks seems to get shorter and shorter? I think people are getting tired of what I'm saying, but I don't know, maybe it's just me. Don't get me wrong, graduate school was a lot of fun, but it was also very intense. And I used to spend a lot of time in the lab. I mean, many straight days. And I spent so much time there on occasions. I would eat and sleep there. And I actually converted a closet in one of the labs into a little bedroom, and I slept on this, what used to be a shelf. So it had a piece of plywood, and I put a sleeping bag there where I could sleep. But one night I was at work very late doing an experiment, and I had fallen asleep at my desk with my head down. And I was sleeping on my arms across the desk. And I woke up startled for some reason, and both of my arms and both of my legs were tingly. You know, I'd cut off the circulation. And so I got up trying to walk, and I went out to the hallway, and it took me, I don't know, maybe 20 seconds or so to figure out where I was because I had no clue, you know, that I was at work for a while. And that was a one-time occurrence, but I knew then that I was probably spending too much time in the lab. So beware of time in the lab. All righty, we are ready for the next talk. Lainey Chastain will be talking about when stars align, and she has two mentors, Dr. Gregory Feiden and Dr. Thomas Vogel, both in the Department of Physics and Astronomy.
Stars don't live forever. They are born and they die. A vast majority of the stars in our Milky Way galaxy are born from giant interstellar clouds that collapse under their own gravitation to form clusters like the one seen here on the left. This is the Pleiades constellation. It can be seen with the naked eye, and it's one of the clusters that we're going to be studying for our research. So we know that this cluster, along with many others, are born from these giant interstellar clouds. But what we don't know are the fine details of this process. Now, this is very important in order to understand star formation. For example, we know that the star clusters and the individual stars are going to inherit certain physical properties of the molecular cloud, such as its molecular components, but properties like the spin of the molecular cloud and its momentum, we don't know whether that's going to be transferred to the individual stars or not. If this does happen, the stars are going to exhibit a pattern within the cluster where the spin axes are going to be pointing in some correlated direction. And this can be visualized with the diagram on the right. So the little green arrow on the diagram is us, and we're looking at the star, and there's these little black dots all over the star, and these are star spots. It's the angle of the star is inclined at about 30 degrees towards us, and as the star rotates, we can model the light that's coming from it to learn more about its properties and more about the cluster that it inhabits. So this is one of the models that we've created with the simulation in our research. And we're in an attempt to answer the question, are the spin axes of stars in a cluster correlated or are they random? Now, the answer to this question right now, based on current physics, is no, they're not correlated, because when the molecular cloud is forming these stars, there's too much turbulence and the individual stars aren't going to inherit that momentum. It's kind of like when you have a whirlpool and there's a beach ball in the middle of it, and the beach ball is going to be spinning in the same direction as the whirlpool. But if someone jumps into the pool, there's going to be too much turbulence and the beach ball is going to be spinning in some random direction. So with our simulation, we can determine whether this is the case or not by varying the parameters within our model and looking at the inclination angle. And if it is the case that they are correlated, it will overthrow 2 decades worth of literature, provide key constraints on star formation, and help us learn more about the evolution of the universe that we live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Lainey. All right, for my last topic that I will speak with you about tonight, it's a very heavy topic, and that's what you choose to do in life. This decision that you're going to make regarding what you choose to do in life is what I term not a ketchup or mustard decision. You're not being asked about what condiment you want on a sandwich, right? You're being asked to decide what you will be dedicating a very large portion of your life to. And this decision obviously will impact many things in your future. So this decision that you make has to be informed and it has to be deliberate. So a few pieces of advice on making this decision. Openly consider many options. Keep your eyes open and don't immediately dismiss an idea or a certain career without vetting it first. Next, decide for yourself. Parents and siblings and friends and significant others are not going to go to work for you. You have to decide. Take time when you're deciding. Of all the decisions that you're going to make in your life, this one is very important. Seek the advice of others. Get as many opinions as possible. And never, ever assume that any career you decide will be anything like it is portrayed on TV, Netflix, Disney Plus, or in any movie. And finally, ask someone who actually has chosen that career, and maybe they can give you some true insight. All right, this brings us to our last presenter of the evening. It's Ronia Nevels, and she will be speaking on alternative transportation needs of older adults, and her faculty mentor is Dr. Rana Gautam in sociology.
In the United States, 1 in 10 individuals will reach the median age of 65 by the projected year of 2050. With this dramatic increase in the older adult population, not only will policymakers, but advocates and even practitioners will need to closely look at some of the barriers of quality of life older adults experience, and particularly in regards to transportation. When older adults cease driving for a variety of reasons, including just the natural aging process, which often leads to slower reflexes, night blindness, and even increased anxiety at driving at high traffic points during the day. Whatever the case may be, when older adults voluntarily or involuntarily give up their license, there's just few options for them to turn to. Often family, friends, and even neighbors will try to help them fill this gap. But there's only so much they can do because of their own hectic schedules and prior commitments. This leads to older adults choosing which activities to give up and what to prioritize. They will often choose more essential services, such as going to the grocery store or even going out to medical appointments versus more social events. This leads to older adults losing a lot of their ability to participate in their communities and losing a lot of the social capital they acquired their whole lives. When this happens, older adults are more likely to be at a higher risk of engaging in social isolation. And when older adults are socially isolated for long periods of time, it has adverse effects on not only their mental health, but their physical health as well. When older adults have a decline in their mental health, it can lead to development of mood depressions, such as depression and anxiety, and also decline in their physical health that leads to hypertension and even diabetes for lack of activity. Therefore, I propose in urban settings to partnership with rideshare programs such as Lyft to provide free and even discounted rides to older adults over the age of 60. Not only will this allow them to get to point A to B, but it will give them some of their independence that they've enjoyed for most of their life. In rural setting where rideshare programs are not as viable, having volunteer driver programs established in rural settings will give older adults in those environments the ability to be mobile again as well. Not only will this provide companionship, but it also can have a side benefit of creating intergenerational exchange of knowledge between older adults and the younger drivers that may serve them. When older adults are able to commute and be able to be part of their community, not only are they healthier, but they're happier too. And overall, researchers show that their overall well-being is much higher. When older adults are able to take part and to be able to taken care of by everyone else, not only are they well thought of, but so as us as a society. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronia. Well, that brings us to the end of our presentations. And while the scores are being tallied, I just want to leave you with a few final thoughts. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for having me serve as the MC on this, the first annual research pitch at UNG. Hopefully, all of our talented presenters tonight were not too nervous. I think all of you did a wonderful job. Given all the constraints that we have with COVID, I think you have all adapted very well, and you should all be very, very proud of your accomplishments. And being able to do research projects and being able to present them is a great thing, and especially it's even greater under these current conditions. And please don't let these crazy COVID times get you down. Just think about how things were in March compared to how they are now. We have adapted so well, and we're only going to get better at dealing with these constraints. And even if there is going to be another lockdown, that's going to be okay. We will get through it. and we'll do a better job than when things were locked down in March. So keep the chin up and keep looking at the stars. You know, times will get better. And again, when they do, we will have learned much from it. And I think my time is up.
It is just about. Thank you so much, Dr. Leyba, for being our MC and host for our very first annual research pitch. We are going to give the the judges a couple of minutes to tally their final scores. As they do, I wanted to thank the judges who are working very, very, very hard right now. I've seen the scores kind of shift and change, and it's been very exciting on this end. You all have done such a great job. It's making it difficult for them to decide. So in just a couple minutes, they will reveal who our winners are. In the meantime, I wanted to thank the presenters. Thank you so much. We had to reschedule this after, our freak storm of 2 weeks ago, and we're so thrilled that you all were able to join us again. I know you've worked very, very hard in your research, and I couldn't be prouder of the job that you've done. You've all done a wonderful job. Kirka is so thankful to have students like you working with us. I also wanted to thank all of you audience members. I know we are zoomed out. We are so tired of these Zoom meetings, but we couldn't think of another better way to make sure that we were still able to celebrate our student researchers and have them begin doing these sorts of presentations. This is great professional development for our students, and we genuinely thank you for joining us this evening. Finally, if you can't get enough of research and you're excited about it, we will be hosting our annual research conference again in the spring. It will be online since we're not quite sure what spring is going to look like, but we do invite you to join us then. It is scheduled for March 26th. And students, if you're looking to take your research to the next level as well, our abstracts for the annual research conference are due on February 19th. So while we are waiting for this final judges score, students, if you'd like to turn your cameras back on, I'd love to give you a round of applause. Audience, I know they can't hear me, but they will know that you're doing it in spirit. Thank you again for being here. Look at those beautiful faces. And thank you so much, presenters. Thank you for all of the, I know many of you were very nervous, but I think you did a wonderful, wonderful job. So great job, everybody. You're welcome to leave your cameras on if you want while we wait those final scores. I will just add to Dr. Leyba's stories. I think most of you know this. Undergraduate research and your academic careers take you in many, many different directions. A lot of you probably know that I was originally a chemistry major. I don't have a PhD in chemistry. Oh, Hannah didn't know that. So yes, your careers can take you in very, very, very different directions. I now have a PhD in English. I study Asian American poetry, which is definitely not chemistry. So it's a very exciting path that you're embarking on as you do undergraduate research and pursue your passions. All right, are we ready for the awards session of tonight's? Okay. So we are very pleased to offer our first, second, and third place. These are going to be awards made directly to the students in not cash. It's going to be on your Nighthawks card, but definitely usable for books or Nighthawks swag. The bookstore knew this was happening, and they're giving you 35% off of lots of items over in the bookstore. So this is shopping time for our winners. So without further ado, we will start with third place. In third place goes to Bryan Rocha. Congratulations, Bryan.
Thank you.
All right. Second place goes to Andy Fleming and Madison Rich.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And our first place winner, barely edging out the rest of you. And I have to say, these scores were so tight on all of this. Our judges had a very difficult decision. Our first place winner is Madison Rodriguez. So congratulations. All right, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you all so much again for being here. We wish you all the best, and we hope everyone has a wonderful, happy, and safe weekend. Take care, and hopefully we'll see you all at the annual research conference. Good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn.